So today I'm happy to be joined by my man Kenny Monday. Kenny, it's always great every time I get a chance to talk to you and see you. As a young wrestler, I obviously looked up to you, and you were somebody that I always wanted to see video of and try to emulate as a young wrestler. So, getting a chance to one meet you years ago, but two, chop it up anytime I see you has always been great. So I appreciate you sitting down with me, and I'm happy and thankful that we can sit here and talk today about you guys joining the EIWA.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. Absolutely. Always good to see you, man. Always good to yep, hang out and talk. And then it was good to see you, last year doing your deal on the broadcast
Mhm.
and doing your commentary with the matches and so did a good job. So yeah, man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. So I appreciate it. So first thing I want to jump into is you guys are now joining the EIWA as it was announced today. That was probably a pretty long process. So when you got the news, what were your first thoughts and feelings, and how are you guys feeling about having a new conference?
Oh man, I'm so excited, Ryan. So excited. It's definitely been a process. I kind of dug in right away when I got here. Knew we went in the conference. Knew that that's huge for us to be in a conference for the kids to be able to wrestle in a conference and then be able to have that opportunity, to qualify to go to the NCAA tournament. And so yeah, so I got right away. I kind of look at the landscape, look at the teams, look at some of the conferences. For me, right away, I kind of saw geographically how the EIWA was kind of fit with where we were,
Mhm.
where our location was, right, and how we can get to these teams and how we can kind of get there without getting on the plane, that kind of thing. And so I saw that, and so I really kind of started to kind of hone in on the IWA. Of course, having the experience with Princeton, with Quincy being at Princeton, that gave me a good indication of how the EIWA operates, the conference, who's in the conference, the teams are in the conference, the coaches that are in the conference. And so just moving within that landscape, I was able to, talking to the coaches, knowing the Princeton guys real well, but then just, talking to all the other coaches during that time. And of course, wrestling is small, so I already knew most of the coaches anyway. But just being in the conference, talking to them and seeing how they work was a good experience for me, and it made a difference when we applied to the IWA to say that I've got some experience. I've kind of
Mhm.
watched the conference, through Princeton's eyes the last few years, and so it kind of gave me an indication of how we wanted to be, and I think it was a great fit for us. And then so we just kind of started putting those guys on the schedule. I had a pretty tough schedule last year, but I had that schedule in mind of trying to position ourselves to get into that conference. And so I
Yeah.
kind of started right away with kind of how we kind of position ourselves. And so it was a process, man. Just kind of getting on board, getting our administration on board.
Mhm.
Of course, not having a program here at Morgan State since 1996. The administration of school really didn't kind of know how wrestling looked. Just kind of how it was set up and how we moved and how the things that we needed to do to be successful. And so one of my first meetings with AD Dina was to talk about trying to position ourselves in a conference that we got to get in a conference, right? So of course I've lost a lot of sleep behind it, right? Because there were some roadblocks. There were some roadblocks. At first, of course, the IWA had 17 teams,
Yeah.
and so when the news came that the Ivies were branching out doing their own thing, kind of opened the door a little bit. Right, we had a lot of pushback in the beginning, just because it was 17 teams.
Mhm.
Right, kind of looked at the MAC conference, and that's kind of they actually kind of reached out to me um, last year and looking about thinking about going to the conference in the MAC, and so we looked at the MAC. That was probably our second option if the EIWA didn't work out. And so we applied there too. But I think it was just trying to do the right thing for the school, for the kids, and what kind of made more sense. And so yeah, I just kind of stayed after it, man, and kind of shared that vision with our administration, and then they got behind it. They got behind us. Got a letter from I met with the president, President Wilson, a couple of times, and he was like, what are your top three um, things that you need to be successful? And of course, the number one thing was a conference affiliation. And so he wrote a great letter. If you know the president, man, he's a visionary, but he's great. He's a great orator. He's great with his words, and he really gave us a great strong letter of support. And I think that made a big difference in gaining that acceptance to the
Yeah.
EIWA.
So what was it like last year where you just had a schedule, right? You didn't have a conference. It wasn't like you guys could wrestle in the postseason really because there were no automatic bids. So how did you keep your guys hungry? How did you keep them motivated? And especially with, like I said, a schedule that isn't conference, it's not set up to have a conference where you're looking at something at the end of the year.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I recognized, not having a conference in order to get to the NCAA tournament. It's kind of based on your record, right? You had to have a strong record. You had to hit some teams, and so I kind of built our schedule. And really, I think Jake Marsh was really our best guy, and I think he was a senior. Of course, he had probably the best opportunity to make it to the NCAA tournament. So we set up the schedule to kind of position ourselves to try to hit some guys that would make a difference and really give us an opportunity to get that at large bid, to get to the tournament. So, man, we had Minnesota, we had West Virginia, we had Maryland, of course, we had uh, Pittsburgh, right,
You
Bucknell.
guys
So,
also wrestled it in Vegas last year too.
yep, also in Vegas, and so we put, so I had to do that just in order to give ourselves the best opportunity to get there, right? Not having a conference, right? And so that was that was a tough thing, but we had to do what we had to do. And so, but the guys understood it. They understood where we were. I mean, of course, our team was basically 95% freshmen,
Mhm.
and so they knew that it was going to be tough, right? And there's going to be some tough matches, and we took some lumps. We took some lumps last year, and but for me, the competitor that I am, I'm not going to run from the competition, right? I would rather compete and lose against, a good competitor than win against, a competitor that that's not at that level, right? So as a program, when I'm building the program, I want these guys to understand the level that they got to compete at. And so that's why we put them in those tough matches and try to. And I think we're better for it. I think the kids come back this year. They knew they had to have a good summer, and so they went home and they pretty much trained all summer. And I can already tell they're better this year. They came back better. Guys came back in shape.
Mhm.
So a lot better than they were last year. And so it made a difference, right? It made a difference. And the guys are hungry this year. They're going to try to turn a lot of those L's into W's this year. We got a good team this year, and we'll make some noise this year, I think.
Yeah. So, you talked about how young your team was. That all comes through recruiting. And something your alma mater is doing right now is having David Taylor at the helm is, getting a guy in there that a lot of these wrestlers who he's recruiting who have seen him compete. A lot of
Right.
these guys haven't seen you compete. Like I said, I was able to watch you growing up. These guys don't have that luxury of seeing you compete. How are you bridging that gap with such a young generation of showing them? These are the things I accomplished. This is what my record is. This is why you should come to Morgan State when, like I said, they don't have that fan kind of connection to you that they would, say a David Taylor or a Cale Sanderson, these guys that have been kind of in the spotlight while the younger generation has been competing.
Yeah, that makes a difference. I mean, that's you can't take that for granted. That's not something that, I mean, it definitely makes a difference. Those guys see, those names out there that that they've watched and they can kind of follow behind. I think that, and then of course the team, right? I think not having that history with the team that the kids can see and see how they compete, right? And see the guys on those teams, right? You look at the teams that are out there that kids can look at and they watch, right? Through all of the Flow Wrestling YouTube, they can see these kids out there. I think For me, I think my legacy kind of speaks for itself. I think the kids either they didn't know, the parents knew.
Mhm.
Um, but you're right though. You just kind of bridging that gap. Talking when I recruited, it's like this first year, I did probably I probably did 95% of the recruiting. I was because I didn't have any coaching staff. It was just me, right? So I'm recruiting the kids, right? Going to see the kids, bringing the kids on a recruiting trip. I was showing the kids all around campus, and so it was all pretty much me until I got my staff in place. Um, but yeah, I think just the way that you talk, and I think once the kids talk to you, they kind of if you're in the game, right, you can kind of research it and see who I am. I think having my sons Russell that definitely made a difference. I mean, the kids either they watch Kennedy or they watch Quincy Russell, right? So they kind of made that connection.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, man, I just think just the kids, once they kind of see who I am and they have a conversation with me, they see what my vision is and what my passion is for the sport. I think that kind of closes that gap. So
Yeah. So now, not only does your resume speak for itself, as you said, but you're now at an HBCU, and BWA was huge in getting that program implemented, as well as having things grow when it comes to HBCU wrestling. And right now, you guys are the one and only. And you're the rest of your campus. While you guys are in the EIWA, they're in the MEAC, right? They're with the South Carolina States. They're with all these different HBCU teams.
right.
How have you guys seen the support since joining campus? And how would you like to see HBCU wrestling in general grow as somebody who has been a transcendent Black wrestler yourself?
Yeah, I think it's just going to take some time, for the campus and the guys and the student body to come around to wrestling. A lot of these kids have never seen wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so I think yeah, the more we're on campus, the more they see us, the more the kids have some success. I think that's going to kind of bring those student athletes in to watch us and administration in to watch us. And again, we haven't had a program here in 27 years, and so it's going to take some time to build that, and then also build the community around us. I'm out in the community every day trying to sell the program, of course. Um, but back on on HBCU wrestling, I was on that committee, right? When we first started talking to schools about bringing wrestling back, we knew we had the initiative. We knew we had the money to start the program. It was just about who wanted to take a chance, who wanted to, try to make a difference in bringing wrestling back and understanding how important that is for our young Black athletes, for any athletes, but especially our young Black athletes, right? So I talked to Morgan State, I talked to Howard University, I talked to Delaware State, I talked to Hampton. So I talked to a lot of the ADs, and of course, one of the biggest drawbacks and one of the biggest hurdles that we had was just starting a Title IX, starting a women's program, in conjunction with the wrestling program, right? So here at Morgan State, we started the acro tumbling program, women's acro program, right? And so that had to kind of get in place for the wrestling program to get started, and so that's kind of the hurdle that some of these schools have. But I think more importantly, I think once they see the sustainability of Morgan State and see the success of Morgan State, I think that will open their eyes a little bit more and say, okay, if they can do it, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can kind of get behind those guys and see what they're doing, and see that it's a good thing. I got 30 kids on campus,
Mm-hmm.
right? Got 30 kids on campus. I had 30 kids last year, so that's new. That's 30 student athletes that you have on campus that you didn't have, right? So that's families that you're creating a legacy behind these kids, right? So when this class comes up and graduate, they're alumni, right? So there's those guys that we talk about every day that we want to sew back into your university, have pride, right? You're this first graduating class, and so people want to see that, right? But again, they need to see success, right? Success breeds success. And when they see it, then people will respond, right? And so I think it's important that we have a good program, that these kids are successful not only on the mat but also in their life, um, in the classroom. We're graduating kids, and so I think it's important that we set that standard, we set that gold standard, of these kids coming through the program. So that's easier for the other programs to follow behind. So it's all about sustainability. Um, the way that we compete, the way that we do our business. And I think it's important for these other schools to see that.
So before I let you go, I want to pivot from you being a coach to you being a dad. We were able to see your son wrestle your college rival's son in Nate Carr when David took on Quincy. What did it mean to you to see those guys out on the mat and kind of see everything come full circle from you competing against Nate Carr to, now the boys are out there and they're competing against each other?
Man, I was so proud that that we were able to keep our kids in the sport and get them to that level to where they can compete at that level. So just a proud moment, man. It's a proud moment. Of course, as competitors, me and Nate are very competitors, and we still compete, right? But I think our relationship, I think it helps that we had a good Nate and I have a good relationship. We always had when we competed like warriors. But then when we got off the mat, where it was dapping each other up, giving each other a hug, man. Good luck to you, man. Good luck to your family. Much respect, right? And so I think the way that we ended up our careers, being on the Olympic team together. Once he went down the weight and I was at the weight class, we both made the Olympic team. So we were teammates, training partners. He came to Stillwater. I went to where he was to train. And so that relationship was really strong and very respectful. And so that just kind of trickled down into our kids, right? So now our kids are very, they're competitors. They want to compete. They want to win. And of course, I want them to win. But that's part of the game, man. It's part of the game. But very proud. I don't think there's any other, Olympians that have kids that are wrestling each other, right? And so I think it's historic. Man. I think it's, especially as young Black kids coming up in a predominantly white sport, to be able to compete at that level. And it's so funny because I remember when they were like younger, they may have been they were in high school still, I think, and we had a camp out at in Pennsylvania. I think it was Akerley's camp in Pennsylvania, and so the boys got to wrestle a little bit, right? And so they were all young, but they were wrestling then. I'm like, one day these dudes gonna be wrestling where it really counts, right? And so it's so funny. Kenny just wrestled David Carr again last weekend at the World Team Trials in Omaha, and they've got the better of him. But it was a good match, and so yeah, it's just we're back. It's like I told Nate, we're like the Hatfields and McCoys. It's a rivalry, man. But it's special, man. David's a special kid, man, and I love him, and I love Nate and Linda, and we compete. But when we're done competing, we're hugging each other and loving on each other, and it's great to see, man. It really is.
Yeah. Kenny, it's been awesome to sit down and chat with you and hear the direction of the program. And I'm glad you guys are now in a conference where you can,
Yeah,
get into the automatic qualifying bid and
right.
everything else. Before I let you go, and got anything else for us?
No, it's historic, man. I thank God for the opportunity, man. I think, of course, without him, we wouldn't be here, right? And but I thank all the coaches, man, that have reached out and been supportive, and I love the wrestling community because everyone's supportive, right? And I got the chance to talk to a lot of the coaches from the other schools, and they were supportive, man. They were supportive. They understood how big this moment is for Morgan State and for the sport of wrestling. It's not just about Morgan State, but for the sport of wrestling, right? The only HBCU that D1 school that's wrestling coming back. I think it's just good for the sport. It really is. It's good for our kids, good for our sport, and so I'm excited that we have the opportunity to compete in the EIWA. It's prestigious, man, and I love the fact that we have landed there, and so I'm excited about the future of Morgan State and the EIWA. Before I go, though, I want to kind of give a little promotion here to my
Mhm.
book that we have out. And this is something that me and my wife put together. And so we're authors now. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called The Gold Standard. And really, it's just a book about, you know, bringing up kids in the world today
Mhm.
with successful parents. My wife is a national sales director with Mary Kay Cosmetics, driving her pink Cadillac, and she's really done well for herself. And so just being too busy successful people bringing up kids. And of course, my daughter Sydney is graduated from Howard University. She's an editor for Penguin Random House, and so she's doing her thing with Penguin Random House as a book editor. Of course, Kennedy graduated from UNC, and then Quincy graduated from Princeton. So just bringing up kids, man, in this world, and showing people and giving them a blueprint of success. And so go out and get your books, man. It's the gold standard. I think you can find it at www dot the gold standard dot coach, and so that's where you can find the book, man. So go get your book, man. I think you can get some good stuff from it, and some things that we've been through, and so I think we got a blueprint for success. And so, just want to
That's
share that.
great. That's great. Like I said, I appreciate you taking time to chat with me, not just right now, but anytime we see each other. It's always, handshakes and hugs and everything else. So I appreciate you. I can't wait to see you guys this season.
Yeah,
Congrats again on joining the EIWA and good luck this year.
thank you, appreciate it, Ryan.